Hello and welcome to the show. I am your host, Christine Marie, and I am so excited to be diving into today how our brain impacts our business decisions, the way that we show up as leaders, the way that we take action or inaction in our business and on behalf of our customers, our employees, and ultimately on behalf of our mission. We are driven so much so at a subconscious level, we're not even aware of what's going on underneath the surface and what's going on kind of a neuroscientific basis in our minds and inside our brains. And I'm so incredibly excited for this conversation with Michelle Rutkowski. Michelle, you and I have had a couple of conversations, and every time I feel like we go deeper and deeper. You're the founder and principal architect of More Studio, and you bring this integration of like a very human-centered blending of art and neuroscience and design in the spaces that you create. And it's really kind of changing the landscape. It's very innovative and it's really making impact for your clients. And I'm so grateful for you joining us today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I really appreciate you saying it in that way because, this is a fun path to be on to craft a company that matches what I'm passionate about. So excited. Yeah, thank you.
Well, we all were having a dinner about 3 weeks ago, I guess at this point. And, I kind of asked folks, what is it that you do? Why do you do it? And how did you come to know that was your calling? Mm-hmm. And I'd love to actually have you kind of introduce yourself a little bit in that way of what is your why? And how did you come to figure that out and find that?
Yeah, well, I will talk a little bit about Opal then because she's fresh on the mind. So my middle name is Opal, and she's my aunt, but she passed at age 10 from appendicitis, and so there was this big loss in our family tree that was tremendous, and I didn't know it. I wasn't there, but somebody was there, which was very interesting to think about. But my dad, he was actually in her belly when she lost Opal, when my grandma Albie lost Opal. So just kind of think about how that might have felt for her. She's kind of in a cold waiting room. She's waiting for the news of her daughter. She was sick with appendicitis. And, just imagine as a mom, she's, I think, 8 months pregnant at the time. And sitting in that cold waiting room, she probably knew as soon as like footsteps started crossing the lobby, the pain that was about to come. So that pain rocked her, and it rocked her for many years. She developed addiction, and we ultimately lost her before I ever met her too. So my grandma Albie and my Aunt Opal were part of the story of how I came into this world. So I came into this world with a story like we all do. And the story I was told about Opal and my family tree was that it was broken, that there was addiction, that you needed to be very, very careful, and that potentially you would be on a track to death yourself if your boat was ever rocked that way. That's the story I was told, but it wasn't the truth of what happened. So what happened was I did inherit something that was profound, this ability to be addicted to things, which is a lovely thing. And that was part of my story, was coming into this world with a story, but not really understanding or comprehending what that meant. So I was told a lot about alcohol use disorder growing up. And of course, it wasn't spoken about like that around my kitchen table. There was a lot of tragedy. My family came, we were in a small town. My dad ended up being a physician. And so he brought a lot of healing to the community, but he also suffered with addiction. So it was a story that was, very, very pungent in our household. And also my brother suffers from addiction as well. So it was all around, but it was not something I could ever identify with myself until I really found myself at a point where I couldn't give up something that I was using as relief and reward. It was the easiest way to get relief and reward. So now that I've come to the other side of what recovery feels like, it feels so good on this side of freedom, number one. So I want to tell people that there is a way, and that a lot of what happened in our structure, in our family tree, there's a lot of addiction, but there's a lot of very passionate people that learn, that grow, that form companies. There's just innovators. All of this is built on the same design of our biology. And so when I uncover the recovery loops and how we really understand ourselves, it just opened up a whole new world for me for how to design spaces, and then also how to design the internal environments of recovery. Yeah.
I've never heard that part of the story, Michelle. Thank you so much for sharing that. Man, it reminds me of just how important those narratives are that are spoken to us and over us as children, especially when it's you're named after her. So there's kind of an identity associated with this beautiful girl, yet the tragedy surrounding her name, there's something actually, it's almost like your story was intertwined, your identity was kind of intertwined with tragedy. And so that's a lot for a person to carry. And even almost having it be predicted for you, you're going to struggle with this if anything hard happens. It is kind of predictive, It's like, well, of course that's what's going to happen because that's what you've been programmed to believe. So I'd love to hear from your perspective of how have you found, I want to talk about obviously the science of how the brain works, and we'll get to that in just a moment, but I'd love to hear specifically as it pertains to what is spoken to you and how we receive that, in addition to, the substance of what we consume.
Yeah. What is spoken to us? So that is a very interesting thing. I think that a lot of what is spoken to us is spoken to ourselves in our moments of stillness, or just when we get a break at all, we start to tell ourselves a story. So we have to hear first and listen to what our brain is saying, and then try to find a way, or where did that come from? Listening to that internal dialogue is such an important part of understanding how we're showing up in the world and what we're putting forward. And so it is an identity changing thing when you go through something like this, where you have something that really felt like a part of you, like I was going to love this for the rest of my life, and then it's not a part of my life anymore. And not that I put any shame around that, because that's ultimately what hides the truth of recovery is shame. And so, anyway, there's just a lot to it. There's a lot to how what we tell each other and what we celebrate as well. So even as in my company, we need to celebrate our wins. We need to celebrate each other. And so it's a process of ensuring that we're, as a team, building that kind of support for each other as well. How we speak over each other is important.
So good.
Yeah, it's raising 3 kids though. I can there's a lot of things that we speak over each other that we have to correct, because there's a lot of competition in this world, if it turns out.
It turns out. I'm reminded as you're sharing that it's not just about eliminating the negative, but it's about intentionally pursuing that which is positive and life-giving and the celebration. So that kind of leads into the reward system of how the brain works in terms of retaining it. Like, for example, when you taste the chocolate or have the drink of alcohol. And the reason why this is important, and I just want to take a step back, the reason why this is so important is because the way we show up at home in our outside of the 9 to 5 window of time significantly impacts our window inside the 9 to 5. So the habits, the behaviors, and ultimately the beliefs driving those really do play into our business. And so I'm excited for us to dive into this, because it's really easy to just try to fix kind of what's topical, the behavior or the action, rather than getting to the root issue, which is what is the core belief, or what is the wiring, literally on that kind of scientific level of, like, if we were to actually look at the mechanics of the brain, how can we adjust those in addition to what have I been programmed to believe? So that we're kind of looking at it from 2 different perspectives here, what's been programmed versus what is just a mechanical kind of malfunction. So will you, Michelle, just kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, so I'd love to talk to you about the 3-step arc in changing your perspective on your reward system, because that's what I want to do for you, for everybody who's listening, is to think about your reward system in a completely different way, like an architect would. And we're going to design better blueprints for your reward system. So you want to listen to your reward system. You want to understand that everything that you are listening to or comprehending from your conscious brain, identify it, hear it, listen to it, and pay attention. That's the first step. So we've got to listen to what our internal dialogue is, listen to kind of what's calling us forward. So what are we getting excited for? And if that isn't what you want to get excited for, and you want to get excited for other things, listen to that. Listen to what calls you forward. Then we want to design better blueprints for our reward system by injecting the places where we get natural rewards. And this is where all the fun comes in, because you cannot punish your way. Nobody can punish your way to recovery. That's not how it works. You can't take on more pain, take on more load, add more to you to recover. So that's not what we're going to do. We're going to add direction and intention, and then we're going to add the ingredients of recovery. That's it. And the direction intention is built like a goal, a dream, like a rendering that an architect would do. So whenever we start a project, we go, okay, how is it going to feel when we walk through the building? What is it going to feel like to be in that space? And we start to build also the project around this. So we're building that anticipation of the end goal by starting with a place where you're headed. Then we add the 4 ingredients of a strong reward system. These are where you get rewards outside of synthetic overrides, and those are connection, discovery, movement, and rest. And we build as much of our day around those things, and we know that we have to have a balance of them. We can't override the system. So I can go into each category, but you can see in my space right now, it's about having these cues of our environment that pull us forward. And that sparks us to move to a source of recovery that's good. So right now I've got my little, in the background here, a walking pad, and this room is connected to the outdoors. It's in our most active space in our house. That's just so we have a little cue to go, okay, well, maybe we can move our bodies a little bit. But more importantly, a lot of our cues are outside, because there's a basketball hoop out there. There's other things out there that try to get everyone to engage and be outside. There's living space out there. So we can craft our environments to give us more sustaining habits that really make us thrive overall, because the final thing is to thrive. Because when you can take the shame out of the reward system, you can feed it better blueprints. You can build a life that calls you forward to the things that you are designed to want. So there's a lot of things we're designed to want, and none of them are bad. We're designed to want good for us and good for each other. So when you build purpose around a mission of service, it really helps you to establish goals that feel really good to build around. And then you inject these things into your life. So when I talk to my kids about it, I say, okay, we got a lot of things that come really easy. Reward comes really easy, like a video game, right? You can just kind of scroll and get your hits. But how do we also inject these moments of connection to make sure we're not missing that discovery? Are we learning something new today? Are we moving our bodies, and are we resting, not just at night, but in moments of stillness in the day? So that's what we aim to do in our household and in the business too. So it's just when you uncover kind of the rhythms of reward and how they've worked to sustain my energy in the right direction, it's a whole nother ballgame. I love it. I love thinking about it.
I love that. And I'd love for us to dig a little bit into the actual genesis of how you came to understand this, because what you're talking about, Michelle, I really, you're the very first person who's introduced this concept of the reward system. And obviously it's, there's so much research, so much data around it, but it's not, it hasn't hit mainstream yet. So back up, if you would, how did you discover this?
Yeah, that's interesting, because you're right. Neuroscience is not approachable. I spent a lot of time trying to download all of this information about what the reward system was. I'm an architect. I want to build it from the ground up. I want to see the shape of it. Where does it fall in our bodies? How do we fix this thing? I wanted to understand the root of my addiction, because what ultimately happened was I'd uncovered it through a molecule that blocked the reward. that unlocked the whole thing for me. So I used a molecule, a medication called naltrexone that's FDA approved to block reward. And that ultimately changed my entire course of addiction understanding, because I understood finally that this system was learnable and teachable. And so, yes, it was an uncovery through pharmacology, but also just this wide opening of, whoa, this is how our bodies work. They can recover and they can sustain balance. And so it's that was about 5 years ago. And so I used naltrexone over the course of a year to reduce my alcohol consumption, and felt the cravings just vanish in front of my eyes. Then I started going, what happened? Why do I feel so much better? Why do I love my life so much more? It's because the sensitivity of the system had recovered, and I was able to engage in peace again. So it's a totally different life when you can have a system that you can build intentionally. So yeah, I'd love to answer any questions on that. I know the Sinclair method is what I used, and so I've got lots of links to how to access that. There's people coming into the mainstream, but I've got 2 brands building around this, so I can give people better tools of recovery through More Thriving, and then More Studio is designing the environments to help them thrive.
So good. I'd love to just kind of double click on what you said in terms of, so you've got we all have our reward system, and what one of the problems, and I'm kind of alluding, or I'm drawing this conclusion, so you correct me, please help me here. One of the main concerns with alcohol consumption, let's say, or other substances, is that it can actually kind of dull our reward system, so that it's not as vibrant and sensitive to enjoy the other kind of more, perhaps even more ordinary miracles of life. And so life becomes a little less colorful because our reward system is ultimately dulled and kind of lulled to sleep a little bit. Is that fair to say?
Oh, so visceral to me when I think about the way you said that. It's exactly what it felt to me. Was there was a painting, and my favorite artist growing up was Van Gogh. So the Starry, Starry Night, right? And interestingly enough, Van Gogh is someone who suffered with addiction and that landed in suicide. So I've been fascinated with this idea of art and story. But when he painted the Starry, Starry Night, it's like this vibrant sky that he was seeing from the patio at his room when he was recovering from alcohol use disorder. But he still got his regular wine intake at that time in history. So he was probably, he was painting the painting, but what it felt like to me was that there was a milky whitewash over my life. Like there was this, and now that I understand the system, I understand exactly what it was, but it felt at the time like it was me. Like this was my identity. Like I was either going to be, kind of suffering and anxious and working hard to be able to earn a drink, or I was going to be drinking and then I was going to be happy. So there was this system that was completely out of whack at one time and only leading me towards one source of relief and reward. And when I could stop, just give myself a little bit of a pause on that reward, and I could build reward outside of it, it completely changed the story. So what I'm teaching people is not that you need naltrexone, and many people do. So I am aiming to get more people to try the Sinclair method and to use naltrexone to reduce their drinking, because obviously when it worked for me, I want to tell everybody about it. I also want you to know the science of recovery, that there are some tools that we can use to watch and monitor our system and give ourselves that capacity to recover. It was, my whole life went more vibrant. Even people's, it's weird, but people's faces became more beautiful to me. I know that sounds, but it just was like I started resonating a different sense of joy and happiness. And when I'm in a state of recovery, I can see it in other people and start to, it's called neural syncing, right? We kind of get this. This is a natural part of being human. It's the human experience, is to share the peace that we're gifted with. And so, yeah, there's a lot to that.
I love this. I love all of this. And Michelle, again, it's so important. As you're talking, I'm just imagining for those of us in kind of coming from that business world where maybe our addiction is TV, or maybe our addiction is smoking, maybe it's porn, maybe it's insert blank, maybe it's really sweet, you know, and it can be things that are not even that all that bad for you. And I put bad in quotation marks, but I just am curious, you know, when we think about the diversification of our reward system, having the ability, and frankly, it can even go so far as that person that's not good for you, where there is almost an addiction to the chaos or an addiction to the drama that is incurred by interacting with this person. I think for most all of us, unless we have intentionally examined our reward system, it's probably safe to assume that we have some, almost think of it as kind of like watering holes. Like we go to these places to fill the void.
Yes.
And our reward system has been shaped by an over-indexed like need for that watering hole. So I'd love to hear, you know, as you're talking, let's say we're talking to a CEO right now who just, man, it's like they're up to their eyeballs. They already have so much going on, so much weighing on them. It's like, this is just how I'm surviving. How do we start moving out of survival mode? And I hear what you're saying in terms of like, yes, there's a pill that somebody can take to kind of help. And I'm going to put this back to you and you can help me clarify. Basically, what that does is that naltrexone kind of puts like a little bit of a block over that current watering hole in our addiction to it. That kind of, okay, well now it's not just that I'm not numb to the rest of the world now. I'm actually numb to this thing that gives me reward. So now when I get a text from this person, or I go to watch TV, or I actually go to watch porn, it doesn't fulfill me. So now I have an opportunity to expand my horizons and experience other inputs that could be bringing joy, or even just nature, like going outside. Maybe I actually might find more color and beauty there. So for those who feel overwhelmed, first, was that an accurate way of saying that? And then second,
such a good way of saying it. I love the way you said
how to go forward.
Yeah, because I often think about the path of least resistance, right? So like what you're saying, that watering hole. And when we have these paths of least resistance in our life to go to this source. And in the modern life, we have so many frictionless rewards available to us that have been synthesized by human hand. Okay, so that is the constant stream of novelty that you can get from your screen or in pornography that just gets deeper and deeper and deeper into a web of endlessness, right? But what is hopeful about this is that no matter how far or how deep you think you've gone down this well of this watering hole, there is a way out. And it's not from punishing yourself during the day. It is from injecting natural sources of reward that come with a little friction. It's good. It's a good thing, right? We need some reward that takes a little working towards. So when we connect with another human and there's physical contact and you feel safe with somebody, that is so incredibly rewarding. Like it is part of what we need to do. And when we're isolated, we won't get to do that. So what's causing this is this retreat and an isolation of a generation that is really problematic. And so we're trying to tell people to get out of isolation, and that means engagement during the day. So if you're thinking about it from a CEO's point of view, you're on all day long. You need to show up with your best self with whatever meeting you're in and what you need. But there are ways that we can reset in between meetings, even with some deep breath work. So taking in a 4-second breath and hold, and then pushing it out of our bodies. Doing that as much as you can to get back into a mode of receiving again. Because otherwise what happens is, and we can get addicted to a state of chaos, like you said, and then we start filtering our environment for the cues that satisfy that, which are increasingly more intense. Notifications become stressful because all of a sudden you're like, who needs me? Who needs me? You know, there's this whole world of that people are trying to get our attention. So we really need to take some time to turn off the inputs, take some stillness, and see what really needs to happen from here. That's how I solve my problems now. It's how I move forward along, the right journey, is by giving myself a little space to integrate. And we need more space to integrate in schools. We need more space to integrate on church campuses. We need more space to integrate in our homes, in our work days, in our learning environments, all of it, we need more space to integrate. So yeah, we try to build around connection, discovery, movement, and rest. Those are the 4 ingredients. That's where you get that natural source of endorphins. Give yourself more of those and more grace.
Yeah.
And know you're not broken, and know it's going to be okay. But there are real ways that you can get some support in this area and real tools for it.
So good. When you talk about cues, I want to lean into that a little bit because for those watching, we can kind of see your space, but for those listening, I'd love to just better help them understand when you think of intentionally putting cues into your space. And obviously, you can hire Michelle who will help you customize your environment. But for someone who maybe they already have a space set up, what do you mean by intentionally putting cues in to allow for any one of these 4 to kind of be a natural doorway?
Yeah, so when we think about cues in an environment, as I'm thinking about a living space. This is where I'm at right now, right in my living space. We don't design a lot of living spaces. We design more workspaces and commercial spaces, but think about how you're setting up your own home and your work zone and where you're working. So right now I'm in a space where I am at home, my most peaceful place in the whole world. I know that, and my children are not here. So I know that there's not going to be any interruptions. I have little puppies in that room, but that's about it. And I'm looking out into my front driveway so I can see if anyone's coming. This gives me an incredibly peaceful sense of safety. I also have my feet on the ground. So I have this kind of clay brick floor and I have my feet on the ground. So that's another way of just grounding my body. And being able to move my body around a little bit helps me get into a more relaxed state. But the cues in our environment, we want to set ourselves up in places that support us for our work style. And then I've got other cues in my space. So what's interesting is it's not so much about the cues that you build around you, because literally I'm looking straight ahead towards a wine fridge that's full stocked of wine. That's not a cue anymore for me. The reason why it's not a cue anymore, I don't have any, like my mouth doesn't water, because it watered every time I saw a glass of wine for 2 decades. So I am looking at a cue that should be calling me towards it. It would have been completely distracting to me at one time. The way we filter our cues, so we don't need to change our environment as much as we need to change our identity, our belief, and the rendering of our future. We're designing for our future self. So when we talk about building better cues, it doesn't start at cleaning up your environment, although that might be a helpful thing. That's not what we're relying on. We're relying on building first this image of where you're headed. I am going to be, I'm going to be a fit, energized, motivated, engaged person for the rest of my life. If that's who you want to be, if you want to show up for your family, if you want to do all this, you build that system first and you say, what is it going to feel like to be unhitched from something? What is going to feel like to live in freedom in my own body and my own capacity and be able to choose what I want to drink at night? What is that going to feel like? You build your space. You build your spaces to filter you better cues by building your reward system first with a rendering. It's the most important thing we can do. It's how I build the business too, because ultimately the business plan is about providing this sense of thriving for a lot of people, right? And that automatically pulls in the right cues to go, maybe this is a path we should align with, because when we're aligned with who we really are and we've built it intentionally, those kind of things fit into the journey. That's how the cue, movement, reward, memory loop works. It's how we filter because we have all these inputs, right? Every minute or second, I should say, there's millions of bits of information, but we're only filtering what's important to us right now. That's where we're trying to get to have the most important things filtered towards us so we can be called to the right things. And there's a lot of things about cognitive load in a space that we should consider as well. How much are we surrounding ourselves with, from notifications to even digital clocks? I'm a little wary of, because I filter no matter what. Say there's a digital clock on the wall and it says 2:22. You're constantly having that input, almost like a ticker or an alarm in your background. And your body is working to filter that information out. And then it'll tell you, it'll capture your attention every so often. Have you ever had this happen to you? When you're like, I'm looking at a clock, it's my birthday, it's my whatever. That's because it's meaningful to you. But what that means is that every other second, your brain was doing that work unconsciously, working on that, instead of paying attention to what you're doing. So we want to understand that cognitive load takes energy, and to really focus our energy into what matters is connecting to your mission ultimately, and trying to use your time wisely as well by aligning with a vision first.
So good. So good. So you said, I wrote this down, it's connection with other people, connection to the mission as well.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about connection broader than just connection to people, because connection can happen with oxytocin signaling, but that can be a bridge too far for some people that are coming into recovery. So we want that connection to be an approachable concept, because sometimes connection feels unsafe for people in recovery and in different situations. We can connect with pets. We can get oxytocin signaling when we snuggle with a pet. We can connect with art and beauty and nature. So those types of things can make us feel held. It's that sense of like being held. And so, and you can also get some of that signaling in like a warm body of water. So there's connection is to nature, to art, to beauty, to awe, even in worship settings. So when we move our bodies, together, we get that sort of connection. Lots of ways to get it. And there's even more.
I love that sense of being held. I've heard that there's different, actually, what's it called? The therapeutic modality where you actually go into like a tank of water. And it really is that sense of being held, and you kind of are there processing, and it's really, I've heard it's actually very, very healing to have that experience. So I'm thinking about this as you were talking. This might be a rudimentary example, so feel free to elevate us. I'm thinking about one of my old clients. I was CMO for them, and they were a foundation repair company, and they had a whole snack pantry, and their snacks were basically indicating to the team of, this is where you're going to end up in 6 months from now based on how we're feeding you. And it was cookies and chips and just a whole lot of fun, very fun snacks that we all know as adults we should not eat. And I'm curious, you said that phrase of basically like, what is it going to feel like when I get to this place? Start with building the image of where you're heading. So is that an example of, like, when you're building your space, what does your kitchen look like for the team? What's the coffee station, the snack station? Like, is all of that kind of included in what you're talking about?
Yeah. There's a few things that came to mind when you were talking about that. One is how we, what we stock our cabinets with and what I eat on a regular basis, because for me, that matters. For me, it matters a lot. So I'll just talk on the individual level and then at a bigger level. So I know I need capacity, and there are two times of life where we're either in depletion mode or we're in growth mode, and you can't kind of hover over both. So I want to be in depletion mode as short as possible in my life. Meaning I want to be, that's when you're underfueled, right? You're in, and when in bodybuilding, I like to do bodybuilding. This is my new addiction, and that I've crafted intentionally into my life. In bodybuilding, we have the growth cycles, and then we have times to shred up, right? When you're doing a cut in bodybuilding. So when you're in a cut, you don't have as much energy for your life. That's point blank. You're called more to the couch, and you're called more to quick fixes. So when I am craving sweets, I pay very close attention to that, because I listen to my reward system. That's one of the listening pieces of this. How much is your craving hitting you? Because I want to know, if I'm next to a stack of candy bars all day long, I'm good, right? Like I don't F with you, like that's good. You do you, like fine, but don't look at me all day. So I don't, you have to be in environments where there are cues that you have to overcome. So I just want to say that we should listen to first the cue of, are we sustained? So making sure we're prioritizing protein and fiber and sometimes quick carbohydrate fixes. So we may need that on occasion. And so, yeah, there's some of those that can play into it, but sugar, I've heard a lot of this, sugar as an addiction and how dangerous it is and all of this. I'm careful about that because I don't want anything in my life to be off limits anymore. I want everything to be completely easy for me to avoid if I need to. And sometimes I indulge. So I indulge every month. I indulge in chocolate, and I get to have my indulgences here and there. And then I get to go into, if I want to go into a build mode or into a depletion for a little bit, and I want to, get a little more shredded, I can do that with intention, knowing that I won't be able to show up as much. I try to reduce my schedule, put on my bunny slippers, and go into that mode of kind of a building. But yeah, there's a lot about that when we're building muscle in particular, which we really need for our recovery, we need to be in growth mode and sometimes in our life. And so I want people to not be afraid of growing. That's a really important thing, is to know that when you grow, it takes some energy, it takes some fuel, but to grow in the right direction. So to your point, yeah, Lay's don't have us growing in the right direction most of the time, but there's still some room for, whatever it is that you find as indulgences, especially in recovery. There are some times where people are just like, I'm going to get, when they go into one of these phases where they want to fix their life, all the bad stuff is out. It's all gone at once. That's not the best solution in these cases. It's more of a, let's focus on the things we want to add and put those in first, just the same way as we did, and before. We're going to do whole foods and all this thing first. So yeah, it'd be great if our snack cabinets had a variety of selections that allowed people to reach for those things that are, so there's frictionless reward in those ways. But I also, in our corporate spaces, they're building places for people to have a variety of foods on a daily basis. They're fully stacked craft cart, and they're bringing in new lunches from different people every day. So that sense of novelty keeps people wanting to come back to the office. We were talking about this for a while, of how you keep people coming back to the office. You want to incorporate places for connection. So places for people to step aside and connect with their neighbors, to connect with the art in your mission. You want to build places for discovery. So what can people discover throughout the space? So the places are more walkable, interior environments are more walkable, and places for movement and places for rest. So the discovery piece of it can be built into your programs, meaning, how do we make a sense of novelty, even with that this comes with brand alliance too.
Yeah.
You can't just always stay still. You have to be shifting and changing and bringing novelty to your clients. And that usually comes naturally, but sometimes you can see it's forced. I'm like, do we really need a new brand of Doritos? Like, aren't we good with like Cool Ranch and Nacho? I don't know.
We're good. We're good. Michelle, I love how practical this is. It's so applicable. I'm thinking of another a restoration company that I was in their office, and they have a beautiful branded gym. They also have a room dedicated where a local pastor comes in every week and offers free counseling to their team. And then I'm thinking of Google, where there's like places to nap. It's working in every single one of these 4 elements, and there's like trees in the lobby, and they just do such a beautiful job of working in these different cues, to your point. And I think of the book From Good to Great by Jim Rollins, right? Or is it Jim Collins?
Jim Collins, I think.
I think it's Jim.
Yeah, I think it's Jim Collins. Yeah.
Okay. I'm thinking of, that's not necessarily in the book. And yet, when you think about the great companies that he's identified, each one of those has established a culture and a brand fit with this is the glue, like these 4 components really as the inner link. Because you said brand, and that's exactly right. If we don't have a clear mission, if we don't have clear values, if we don't even know necessarily the very things that are luring people in and drawing them to work for us and work with us, then when we think about, well, how do we have the connection, pillars, like what is that founded on? And I think brand is also the foundation upon which we then can build this entire ecosystem.
Yeah, the building the brand around this, I think, is a very interesting concept, because you can think about how how you want people to connect with you or connect as a team, and what does that mean for your team? And then, how do we make sure we're always learning and growing? Because if anyone stays stagnant too long, it also becomes a real drag to show up at work. So we don't want people to get stuck in any position where they can't grow and change or learn something new. And then, just making sure that people do have environments to support them and their movement and their bodies and brains. I know a lot of people are in spaces potentially where they have to show up to work and work from 9 to 5 in a cubicle with high walls. And so I really feel for people like that might have a job where it's very sedentary, and that leads to burnout. And so we really want to start spreading the message of how to make anti-burnout environments for people that can, especially my kids' schools too. I'm really aiming to encourage the teachers to open up the windows, this idea of forcing focus and not allowing body movement, and trying to, how do we design environments to encourage movement outside when we can? So if it's just a 10-minute walk in this type of heat, it'll be okay still. Like, but could we space our buildings a little further away and have people walk a little further through campuses intentionally, and have days that are broken up? I remember as an architect, I would always, this also includes creativity processing. So when I was in, I've been able to work in really great environments because as an architect, the architect's office better look pretty good, right? So I've been in a lot of cool environments. And when I worked at a larger firm, I would sit at my desk and get stuck. And then I would go up to the front conference room before I knew anything about neuroscience or why I was doing this. I would go and spread out my work and put everything printed out, and I would sit in the conference room with the floor to ceiling glass and the dappled light streaming in at me, and I would be in stillness for a bit, and I would come up with the most amazing things in that room. And it was calling me towards it, and luckily I had the conference room was available. But we need to change up our environments on a fairly often basis, at least. Some people don't. I will give it to that everybody has different inclinations, but somebody who's a creative, who's using that kind of thought process, it is good to change things up and get a little bit more, excitement for your work.
So good. Michelle, I want to just end with this concept, kind of having a full circle moment. You talked about how when you were raised, how there was just a lot of fear around addiction and fear around anything basically triggering you that could then tempt you towards substance. And you said it so well earlier, where you want the ability to not be afraid of candy bar or the bottle or whatever it is. You want the ability to be able to pass by and make a decision, or take that candy bar and eat it, or have a drink and not fall back into addiction. And I think what you've really discovered is that the reward system is trainable. It can be rewired and relearned, and we can unlearn addiction without having, and I want to say this lightly because I have not struggled with addiction, and I've never done the 12-step. I know that has helped so like countless people. God bless the program. And it sounds like there's another way in addition to that, which is you can kind of start muting that pathway towards that addiction pathway towards that substance, and it's life changing. And your identity, you are not an addict. Changing it from that kind of core identity level, where it's just a wiring in the brain that just needs, just a wire that needs to come back into place.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're right about the 12-step programs. And there's so much of when you look at the science, the neuroscience of recovery and how we get that sensitivity back, there's so much of that regularity, the community, all of that supports that as well. And it doesn't work for everyone. It doesn't work a lot of the time. So I really am passionate about giving people real scientific tools and resources to help spread the word that addiction has a biological root. And when we can see it, we can design better blueprints for it. And that way we can really understand and feel the system. I'm building tools so that people can see it on a screen. They can see their recovery, and that we really give this back to people. My goal is to get as many documented cases around the Sinclair method and real data that we can make a difference in getting this into our standard of care. It's just a regular option for people. And it is an option right now for anyone that wants to try it. There's no barriers right now, but you do have to, there are some specialty clinics that know how to prescribe it, because you want to make sure that you're working with someone who knows how to do it. So yeah, lots of resources.
Thank you so much, my friend. Where can people learn more about you?
You can follow me at morestudio.net. I have a monthly newsletter called The More Code, where we release the science, the current science on the neuroscience of architecture. And you can keep up to speed on my mission of changing the world's ideas about addiction and giving people visibility of their reward system and the tools back. So yeah, excited to see who joins, and anyone's welcome to join More Code and our mission.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I'm so grateful for what you're doing, and I'm excited. I'm excited for your mission. So I have a feeling we'll be doing a lot together over the next.
To say it out loud. Thank you so much.
Yes. Let's go.
All
right, my friend. Thank you. Y'all, thank you so much for joining us today. I will see you next time. Have a good day.